Hi everybody, welcome to the latest Wellington Community Networking event. Today, as you can see, Wellington people are in the same room, so that's quite nice. So I have myself, I'm Emma, I'm the Director of Consulting Services in Wellington, and I have with me
Jessica Day. I am the Marketing Manager for the US.
And with us, we have a very special guest today. So we have Emily Long from the APM, and Emily is the Head of Professional Standards at the APM, and we wanted to talk to you today about a really important topic, and that is the recent announcement that the PMI PMP is now a route to Chartered Project Professional with the APM. This is really important for all of our careers. Those of you working towards PMP, or if you already have it, you now have a brand new branch to look at for your career. So we wanted and invited Emily to come along, share what that means, and then give us an opportunity to ask some questions. So we'll turn our cameras off and we'll let Emily introduce herself, and then she will do the same and get straight into it. Thank you for joining. See you at the end.
Thank you, and thanks very much for having me. So as introduced, I'm Emily, Head of Professional Standards here at APM. So my role is very much focused on the content and the development of both our standards and our qualifications, and part of that is obviously the Chartered Project Professional Standard. So we've prepared a fairly brief presentation for you today. I've gone a bit into the history of what chartership is, because I appreciate it may not be as well known in different regions. And then also we'll dive into what actually it means for PMP holders as well. So I'm going to whip my camera off there just so you can see the presentation fully. So as mentioned, we're going to discuss what chartership actually means, the impact of chartership on your career, and also the eligibility and the new pathway. So a little history lesson first of all. APM was awarded the chartered status in 2017 by Queen Elizabeth II. And in the world of chartership statuses, we're a baby, we're really young. The first chartership on record was awarded in 1231 to the University of Cambridge by King Henry III. And the original purpose was to create public or private corporations, and they're more generally now used to recognise bodies that work in the public interest and can demonstrate preeminence, stability and permanence. Now this very much goes to the heart of what APM's purpose is, which is to advance the science, theory and practice of project and programme management for the public benefit. And ultimately, that's our vision. It is to live in a world where all projects succeed, because when projects succeed, society benefits. So that's a little bit of a brief history for you. So how does chartership actually impact you as a person? We know that despite it being a UK awarded accolade from the Privy Council, it actually has a huge amount of global credibility. We're seeing, even just in the short 7 years that we've been running the chartership programme, a huge amount of recognition across corporates, especially global corporates, that actually expect their more senior project managers to be able to validate their experience by achieving the chartered standard. We're also really proud of the fact that in that 7 years, I think it's just over 4,000 chartered project professionals. And what they've created is this great, unique network where they can connect and collaborate with each other and discuss the best way to deliver projects. Now, we all know that, and I'm going to have to get this the right way around, that we work to live, not live to work. So another great advantage of having chartership is the increased earning potential. With that industry recognition, we know that you can prove your skills and command those higher salaries and those more rewarding career opportunities. And we can actually contextualize this. So in 2023, we did a salary and market trend survey where we were able to demonstrate that 58% of chartered project professionals earn over £70,000, which is the equivalent to just over $90,000 US, according to a currency converter I used this morning. So let's have a look at actually what it means to become a chartered project professional. The standard is a professional benchmark that demonstrates attainment of a very defined level of technical knowledge. That's like the theory. So what does project management mean in theory? Professional practice, how you have delivered more complex projects, and also that you behave in an ethical way, that you're delivering these projects by kind of the ethical standards that we require. the basis of the assessment that we use is essentially that you must pass those defined levels to be entered onto the Register of Chartered Project Professionals. And that's a register that's on our website. People can go through it, they can find different chartered project professionals, engage with them, and it's kind of a public register. There is a base level of criteria required for anyone going for chartership, and that is that they have a proven track record of delivering projects, programs, portfolios, or a key controller enabling function. And that's a really key thing because it's the Chartered Project Professional standard, it is not the Chartered Project Manager standard. So it does cover quite a broad range of people. We also require anyone applying for Chartered to have up-to-date knowledge of current practices and methodologies, and also be actively involved in the project profession. Now, so that's kind of the overall eligibility. And I'm going to go to the next slide in just a moment, which kind of goes into a huge amount of detail of how to get there. But one of the things I wanted to share with you is that Adam Bodinson, who is our CEO, he joined us a couple of years ago. And one of the things he has really kind of championed since he took over the leadership is that on a global scale, the project profession is growing exponentially. The need for project managers, for program managers is huge. Everything is done on a project basis. And there are several different professions that handle those project managers, that work with those project managers. But ultimately, we all want the same thing. So ultimately, it's one profession. And he's been really forthright in his desire to work with other organisations such as PMI to really champion the science of project management, to really champion that message that regardless of who your membership organisation is, we just want people to succeed in delivering good projects. And that is why I think it was a couple of months ago now, we announced a new pathway that's coming into the standard. And this pathway, so kind of more generally, there are different ways to become a chartered project professional depending on your academic and your professional practice. And the new pathway that we have is now recognising for the first time the PMI's PMP qualification as a recognised assessment to be able to support you achieving the chartered standard. So taking it back a notch, there is 4 pathways, 3 are already established, and the 3rd pathway is going to launch in September. And what that means for yourselves if you hold the PMP qualification is that you can come through the chartered standard on a slightly streamlined route. I should probably say it's definitely not easier, but it is also not as long as a pathway that you might take if you've got no qualifications at all. So this slide has all the 4 pathways that will be available in September, and that pathway 3 is the one that would be applicable to yourselves sitting with a PMP qualification. It essentially means that instead of a 2-hour interview, it would be a 1-hour interview. And the written application focuses on professional practice, but a smaller number of competencies. So the kind of the full pathway, if you had no academic credentials, you'd have to write a written application covering 12 competencies. Whereas on this new pathway, if you have the PMP qualification, or indeed our own qualification, the PMQ, you can write a written application which covers 8 competencies. Then at interview, instead of the 2-hour interview, which covers professional practice and technical knowledge, you'd only actually be required to sit a 1-hour interview, which just covers the technical knowledge side of things. So you can see it's a slightly more streamlined route in, and it's very much recognising the fact that when sitting the PMP qualification, there is prerequisites to that qualification that you have already achieved a certain level of professional practice, and it is that's we're recognising on the chartered standard. All submissions, regardless of pathway, do require details of 2 proposers, so you would need to still get 2 people to say that they feel you're of that chartered standard. You would need to confirm the CPD has been undertaken, so that's continuing professional development, and also an agreement to comply with the APM Professional Code of Conduct, and that's essentially just making sure that you are acting both ethically and professionally. And that is pretty much in terms of what you would need to achieve for it. And what we're really hoping this does is really encourage people to see the chartered standard as that global standard that everybody strives to achieve, to be able to demonstrate that they not only know the content and the theory behind project management, but they're also able to very much deliver those more complex projects, and they're able to succeed in that place. So that was a very quick run through of the Chartered Standard. I appreciate I probably spoke very quickly, but the advantage of that is it has left us plenty of time for any questions that you may have, or anything that you would like to flag.
So yeah, we're going to start off with a couple of questions kind of from our side, just things that people have been talking about within our own network and community. The first question is, did anybody actually start through this process yet? I know it was only a couple of months ago. It was in, I think, early June, late May, early June. Do we have anybody that's actually started through the process with the PMP, or no, it is just purely interest at the moment?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So if you go on our website, there is an expression of interest form where we're basically using that as a mailing list to keep people up to date with the process. The official cycle doesn't actually start until September. So for chartership, we work on cycles, which basically means there is a submission deadline. So you can apply whenever. So from September, you can literally apply whenever is convenient for yourself. But you'd fall into a particular cycle, and those cycles basically say when you would get your result by. So it just gives us the ability to have that kind of really streamlined, you've applied now, so your result is going to be issued in this date. So yeah, the process doesn't actually fully open until September. What I would say though, is if this is something that you're looking to achieve, I would strongly recommend looking at the Chartered Standard and starting to think about what competencies out of those 8 mandatory competencies that you think that you'd be able to demonstrate your criteria against. So there's definitely preparation work that can be undertaken now in preparation for that September opening.
And I think certainly when chartership first appeared, the recommendation was there was about 30 hours worth of work to kind of get everything ready and things like that. Is there a recommended kind of time that people should be spending on bringing together this information?
I think it very much depends on the individual. So what we're looking for in the application is you can write up to 4 project overviews. So that's very much, this is a project that I was working on, and this is why it demonstrated the level of complexity requirement. And then you would use those projects to be able to demonstrate, for example, financial management is one of the competencies. Not that you have to write on financial management. I know that's not everybody's bag. But what you would do then is take that project and say, in relation to the competency for financial management, this is how I have demonstrated those competencies, and that's what you kind of base your application on. So, I mean, that 30 hours was very much the general for the full application. So you probably would still be looking at about that 15 to 20 hour mark, but very much depending on how naturally it comes to you in terms of just writing. It is very much about writing about your experience. And I always encourage people to almost not overthink it. Just write what you know, write what you did, and just show how you were personally accountable for delivering those competencies, and you should be absolutely fine.
And that idea of showing and demonstrating that personal accountability is really important in the process, isn't it? It's kind of more I and less my team did this. It's very much about you as an individual, as opposed to my team delivered this great giant thing.
You just hit on probably one of the things that is the most unnatural thing to do in the chartered application process, because I guess with projects, right, it's all about teams. It's all about how you work as a team to deliver a great outcome. Whereas for this, we are looking to award you and you solely as a chartered project professional. So actually, we only want to know what you did. We don't want to know about what your great finance team did or your great risk analyst. We want to know how you delivered that competence. And it is a really unnatural, uncomfortable place to be, but yeah, get into your head, it's about you as an individual, not about the teamwork that delivered that great project.
Yeah, and I think that's one from my perspective, and that's one of the key messages for anybody listening or anybody that looks back at this webinar, is like, make sure you focus on yourself, which is a little bit uncomfortable sometimes to write about how great you are, but maybe that's the first personal challenge that gives you that depth of breadth of knowledge and understanding of what you can actually achieve, which I think as human professional adults, we don't take that much time to actually step back and think about that kind of stuff. So it's maybe a good exercise anyway on a personal level.
Great exercise. And I think that's a really interesting way of approaching it as well, because there'll be some people that are listening that maybe aren't eligible at this time for chartership because maybe they haven't reached those competencies, but actually starting to think about your application now really allows you to think about that professional development. So which areas have you not had exposure to? Which can you not demonstrate that personal level of accountability? And then go and have a chat with your line manager. Go and see what other projects you can start working on and start building that now. So it's not necessarily just about that opening date in September. It's about thinking about that whole pathway.
Yeah. So another question that we got asked about was around the CPD, and you mentioned that we have to have a certain amount of CPD and we have to demonstrate that. Now, in order to do the PMP, you have to qualify for that. So you have to demonstrate a certain amount of continuous professional development and experience before you are eligible to take the PMP qualification. From a chartership perspective, does that kind of roll over, and do you as APM kind of use that as a baseline, or do they have to kind of create their own separate CPD and experience base in order to do the chartered?
Yeah, so they would still need to, there is a specific CPD form that needs to be completed, but you can absolutely utilise, I think it's PDs that are the terminology used by PMI, so that can be used. There is an exception to it, and that is for our CPD log, we do require a reflective statement. So what have you learned from that CPD? So it would just also be including that in there as well, just to demonstrate how you've taken that learning and applied it to your practice.
And it's important to say that as an APM member, if you have one of the APM qualifications, that's something that we would be doing anyway on an annual basis. That's something that we all have to kind of log on and fill in as we go through the year anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. We're very much about continuing professional development. It's partly why my job sits in the education and lifelong learning type department, is because it isn't just about receiving those qualifications, it's about embedding it and really continuing that journey throughout your career.
And to kind of help people, so obviously the APM has the mentoring scheme, which is free for people to use if they're kind of logged on, they have an account and they're members. Is there a route to get support for chartership? I know kind of in the first couple of years there were organisations and people who were like, if you come here, we can kind of help you to develop your chartered response, if you like. Is there something like that still available? Is it more of a mentoring thing? How do people access that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, in terms of a chartered application, there is no kind of training that can be given, like formalized training, because it is about you as an individual and your competence in those areas. But what we do is we have free webinars on our website. So you can sign up on our website and go to a webinar, which very much goes into the crux of how to approach your application, how to complete that. We also have a great matrix tool on our website where you can actually assess your own competence and where you're at in relation to your chartered application. So I'd very strongly recommend having a look at that, because it really helps decide which projects are the right projects to use for your application. And then, the mentoring I can't kind of speak highly enough of. So we have a great team of mentors that are very much there to support people. And what I really like about our group of mentors is they're all volunteer based and they're all about furthering the project profession. So you get this kind of really great relationship with people that just want to help, which I think is so rare these days, isn't it? So it's great to actually utilize that service. It would be remiss of me not to talk about our chartered team. So our administrative team that run the chartered standard. If there is any questions, if there is any kind of concerns, they are always more than happy to support anybody and have a chat and point them in the right direction to different resources.
And I think one last question from me, and then I'll see if Jessica has a question. We'll see if we have anyone. So if you're on the call, if you want to pop anything in the meeting chat, then feel free to do so. My question's really about kind of supporting the PMP itself. So obviously, historically, the PMEQ, which is the APM Project Management Qualification, was kind of, I would say, the main route for people to go through. Has there been some education for the assessors to understand kind of the nuances between what they're used to looking at in terms of an application versus the kinds of, slightly different terminology that we might be seeing, slightly different approaches and ways of doing projects, kind of writing about projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where it becomes quite interesting about chartered. So to go for chartered, you do not need to be a member of APM. It is not a membership linked product. And as such, it has never actually just been linked to APM's way of doing things. So we are very keen to demonstrate pan-sector, pan-organisation approaches. And I think even just different terminology is something that the assessors have always been used to kind of going through and working through and understanding. A lot of our assessors actually already hold the PMP as well, because I think you have that kind of cross-pollination, which is always great. But I think the key to it is that this is not an assessment of do you use the right terminology. This is very much an assessment at a much higher level in terms of, can you do what you have told us about? Can you put that into practice? And I think that's the real key thing to it. And I think what we do see a lot of, especially in the project management world, is because we are pan-sector, because we are pan-methodology, that our assessors have to be very, and dare I use the word, agile when it comes to assessing. They have to make sure that they're not penalising anyone for using different terminology, because the standard is there for all project professionals. It isn't there just for APM project professionals.
And I think for me, as a long-standing member of APM, and I've volunteered with PMI and IPMA, it's really nice, I think, to see the associations working together to kind of bring all of this into, no matter where you work, especially as the world and work is much more globalized now. I think it's great to see that, our company, Wellington, we work across the world, so we will have people with PMP versus, people with APM. So I think it's a really important message from the associations to say, it doesn't really matter. We kind of acknowledge nowadays that we do have more agility in the way we run projects. There isn't just one way. We know that, taking bits from all different methods is now more standard than anything else. And I think this really reflects, I would say, the industry. So for me, I think it's a really positive change and a really positive message. So I'm just going to turn to Jessica. Have you got any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So Emily, I'm going to ask you a few questions from the American perspective here. So, okay, say hypothetically, I'm an American, I've already got my PMP, really not sure I want to go through a whole nother process. Like, yeah, I'm already half the way there. You said, the amount of things I'll have to write about is shorter. Still on the fence though. Is it really as an American, for example, or anyone outside of the UK to also get that chartership?
Obviously I'm going to say yes. But I think for me, the difference that Chartered offers is that assessment of your skills and capability to deliver the project. So it's not about you learning text. It's not about you learning about those methodologies. This is about you being able to actually demonstrate your attainment in the project space. I think as companies, operating on global levels, it gives a really easy translatable level that you are at if you hold chartership. So it isn't a case of going into a job interview and saying, hey, well, I've delivered these projects, and people being like, I'm not really sure what that equates, what level equates you to. You can turn around and say, hey, I'm chartered. And they immediately know that you have gone through that level of attainment. We're definitely seeing, and this is very much UK at the moment, but obviously we are hoping for it to be more global. We are seeing chartered appear in things like job descriptions, that people, when they're saying we need this program director and we need them to be chartered. So it immediately gives you that kind of level of expertise that's just really easily translatable from that perspective. So yeah, I would absolutely say, even if you're American, it is very much something that would be of benefit. And I think that's something that we'll just see grow as we move further afield.
That's great, thank you. And then in terms of keeping the chartership, so with the PMP, obviously, you need a certain number of PDUs each year. What is that process for the APM?
Pretty much very similar, and you can use the PDUs so the PDUs that you are logging with PMI, you can then just translate them and log them to your CPD log. So we call it a CPD log. And yeah, the only addition would be that reflective statement on the CPD log is not onerous at all. And what that's just doing is ensuring that you're staying up to date with current methodologies, staying involved in the profession. And that's it. So it's that yearly basis, that yearly CPD log, and then you stay on the register. Of course, if you wanted to take a break, we have processes where people can take a break from the register and be removed if they're having a career break or moving into a different area, so to speak. But yeah.
Great. And then the last question, it's slightly related to the first one. Say I'm interviewing for a new position, this future potential employer, they're not familiar with APM or with the chartership. They only know the PMI, really. How do I explain the value that additional title brings?
Yeah. So I think for me, the key value of it is that the chartered standard is written to look at a very senior level project manager, is there to look at somebody that has, this is the key to it, the demonstrable experience of delivering complex and complex projects that have wide varying stakeholders, that has levels of uncertainty, levels of risk. So I'm clearly not saying it as well, but there is a really nice statement on our website about what those projects need to incorporate. And I think to be able to say, hey, I have demonstrated that I can do this, and not just I know the terminology around it, I have actually done it, I have actually had this validated by two very senior assessors, I think gives an employer a level of and that they're bringing someone in that isn't just talking the talk, they've actually demonstrated they know how to deliver these complex projects. And I think that's where the value sits with Chartered.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emily. Those are all the questions I had.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's about confidence, right? So I know, and we're talking about this very early on. It's not even live yet, for goodness sake. So you would expect it to grow. But I think one of the correlations for me is always like in the UK, we have chartered accountants. We had chartered surveyors, and so if I'm a company or an individual and I need an accountant, I will only go and find one that is chartered. I wouldn't go and get an accountant that wasn't chartered. And I think that's the future view, isn't it? That's like the long-term future view, is that actually the value comes in the future when these things start to kind of really take hold and people start to, I guess, recognise project management as more of a professional discipline, just like chartered accountants and chartered surveyors, etc.
Yeah, I think definitely in the marketplace, this is what we're seeing, right? So I think 50 years ago, chartership was very much a secondary, project management was a very secondary, tertiary career. People fell into it. And that is still the case with a lot of our membership now. But now we are seeing degree courses in project management. We're seeing people doing apprenticeships in project management. It's very much becoming a primary career, as it should. And so as we start seeing that rolling out and it becoming more established, I think that's where the real value of chartership will really start to soar.
Amazing. Okay, so that's all the time that we have. So we will pop this recording with a companion article and the slides on our website. So anybody that registered, we will be sending the information to, and then it will be widely available both on our website, and we'll share it with Emily so you can share it within your network. So first of all, I want to say thank you, Emily. This was super short notice, and it's because we felt it was important to start it before the summer. So thank you so much for being with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me and giving us the opportunity to talk about it.
And thank you to everybody that's registered, everybody listening live, and anybody else coming back to listen again or for the first time. If you have any questions, you can go on the APM website and you can contact Wellington, and we'll put you in touch with somebody who can talk further about your journey. Thank you all for joining, and have a good one.